A group of students, an empty hall, and 1,250,000 dominoes. 46 students from the technical universities of Delft, Twente and Eindhoven had devoted 2 months to intensive computer calculations and 6 weeks to the painstaking construction of the largest domino show which had ever taken place in the world. An unusual show, for the students had designed a trip around Holland, showing, unexpectedly perhaps, that Holland has more. The first leg of this trip, from Amsterdam, through North Holland and the Wadden Islands, to the northern provinces of Friesland, Groningen and Drenthe. And now KLM President Sergio Orlandini gives the start. And just like so many of KLM's flights to all corners of the world, this trip too starts at Schiphol, undoubtedly the world's best loved airport. Holland is not only the home of KLM, but also of Fokker, one of the few independent aircraft manufacturers in Europe today. Amsterdam, Holland's capital, a city which can trace its history back to the 9th century and obtained its city rights in 1275. Amsterdam, the dam on the Amstel, and today the dam is the site of the city palace, built on 13,659 wooden piles. Indeed, much of the city is still constructed this way. Amsterdam, enjoying its richest period in the 16th and 17th centuries, when Dutch merchants roamed the world in search of fame and particularly fortune. The beautiful canal houses bear silent witness to this rich past. Amsterdam, the home of Rembrandt van Rijn, celebrated for a while, but forgotten at his lonely death. And Amsterdam, the city immortalized in music. Holland, a country dominated by water. Today, the sea is giving up its riches. In the past, the sea was pushed back ever farther as the Dutch fought to gain more land. And the most important weapon in that age-old fight? The windmill. To the north, a group of islands, the Wadden Islands. The most important, Texel, known especially for its delicately pre-salted lamb. Dunes and retreating sea, a sheltered brooding place for countless thousands of birds. The chain of 6 islands offers something at all times of the year. A chance of finding rest in a hectic world, of enjoying a world without traffic, without cars, of seeking solitude. The Dominoes rush on in their planned course, tracing now the Lion of Holland and the national colors. Holland, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, is small, just 40,844 square kilometers, with more than 20% under sea level. It is a parliamentary democracy with a constitutional monarch. And each year, on the 3rd Tuesday in September, the reigning monarch opens Parliament in The Hague in a ceremony known as Prinsjesdag. Holland has 12 provinces, each with its own character. Take Friesland, for example, a province of water and, often, ice. Each year, as the temperature drops below freezing point, the whole of Holland begins speculating about the 11 Cities race, a marathon skating competition over 200 kilometers, on a route which, since the 18th century, has taken skaters past 11 cities in Friesland. "14,000 skaters either competing fiercely for the honor of winning or simply enjoying a unique recreational experience." Friesland is also the home of the famous Frisian cow, known here as Us Mem, our mother. But then Friesland is rich in tradition. The annual Island, for example, a race on the Frisian lakes between old sailing ships manned by crews from the 11 main cities. Friesland's neighbor, Groningen, is not only important to Holland's past, for here is found the restored Boertange, a 17th century fortified city, but also for Holland's prosperous present. The enormous reserves of natural gas are encapsulated deep under the beautiful Groningen countryside. The trip continues to Drenthe, the province of expansive moors and heathlands, the home of flocks of sheep, tended by a shepherd. A lonely occupation, perhaps. Drenthe is also the site of megalithic tombs, erected some 2,000 years before Christ from giant rocks which used to litter the stark countryside. The second leg of our journey, from the far north, through the provinces of Flevoland and Utrecht, to the far south of Limburg. (1927). The Dutch, in their never-ending struggle to wrest land from the sea, embarked on one of the most daring, most elaborate undertakings, to turn the mighty Zuiderzee into a placid lake, and then to reclaim, inch by inch, the ground they so badly needed. By 1932, the dike was completed, and the fishermen saw the once so rich seawaters turned into fresh water. No more would the tiny fishing boats set out on their journeys to the sea. Where once the fishing boats had sailed, bringing prosperity to the many tiny villages, houses began to spring up. And crops of a different kind were harvested. This man-made world showed a unique geometry, which has been captured by many Dutch artists. Escher, with his geometrical etches, created a world of absurd illusion, a two-dimensional representation of three-dimensional impossibilities. Mondrian, too, used geometrical forms to achieve a strangely emotional world of lines and squares. And then Appel, who returned to unstructured raw emotion, attacking the public and his canvases with a force unknown in Dutch modern art. The falling dominoes lead us to one of the foundation stones of modern Holland, the city of Utrecht. A bishop's see, shepherded from the magnificent Dom Cathedral. And in 1579, the site of the signing of the Treaty of Utrecht, in which the various provinces united themselves under Willem of Orange to free themselves from the yoke of Spanish tyranny. The students of Delft University, who had spent so much time in preparing the domino show, could hardly allow themselves to forget the famous blue pottery of their city. The history of Delft blue began in the 17th century. Initially, it was a copy of porcelain from China, but quickly achieved an identity which is uniquely Dutch, and became a much desired collector's item. Farther south, we reach that market garden of Holland, the Betuwe. Fruit trees abound, many lining the banks of the mighty rivers which flow through this area on their final stretch to the North Sea. Above the great rivers, most of the population is Protestant. Below, the majority is Catholic, and it is these who celebrate Carnival with heart and soul. We have reached the most southerly point of Holland, and at the same time the highest, towering a mighty 322 meters above sea level. The flowing landscape is a sharp contrast to the flatness which is so typical of much of Holland. Here too is the point where the borders of Holland, Belgium and Germany meet. For many years, the flowing hills housed the Dutch mining industry. In the 1960s, however, the mines were closed down, and the Dutch state mines became an important power in the world of chemical products. Advanced technology in Holland is widespread. It is the headquarters of Philips, the multinational electronics giant. It has its own flourishing computer industry and expertise in aviation and space technology. Such technological superiority can only be achieved by highly trained specialists, and the three technical universities who together prepared the domino spectacle have been the cradle for many such specialists. And that technique and art can go hand in hand is clearly demonstrated by the students' tribute to another of the great Dutch artists, Vincent van Gogh. So to the final leg, along the rivers to Zeeland, Rotterdam, and the far-flung beaches. The great rivers, the Meuse and the Waal, have long been the lifeline of Europe. Here, enormous barges shuttle their goods between Switzerland, Germany, and the North Sea. Industry, too, has found its place here. Brick factories, for example, drawn to the area by the heavy clay. Zeeland is Holland's recreation province. A rich country where old farmhouses nestle alongside old cities such as Goes. Zeeland, the eastern province, has lent its name to that finest delicacy from the sea, the oyster. And then the dominoes fall in rubble, reliving for a moment that awful time in 1953, when Zeeland was flooded as the dikes were breached in a heavy storm. This disaster hastened the decision to embark on one of the most ambitious water control plans ever, the Delta Works. An enormous system of dikes, bridges and dams would ensure that such a disaster would never recur. The construction used many unique techniques. The great foundation pillars, for example, were built in an enormous ditch which was later flooded so that the pillars could be floated to their final destination. And also, the design of the Delta Works ensured that the oyster beds, which had brought such fortune to Zeeland, would be supplied with a continued flow of salt water. Another source of fortune to modern Holland, the harbour of Rotterdam. Here in Pernice are the many tanks for the storage of crude and refined oil. Rotterdam is the world's largest harbour. It is a continuous hive of activity as giant tankers, container ships, merchant sea vessels from all parts of the world load and unload their precious cargoes. Rotterdam was razed to the ground during the last war and has since been completely rebuilt. Its modern architecture is in sharp contrast to the traditional gables in other Dutch cities. Think of Holland and you think of tulips. The bulb fields, stretching in endless rows in the spring sunshine. The tulip, so much a Dutch flower, was first brought to Holland in the 16th century from far-off Asia and South Europe. And here it flowered into unexpected glory. But the only way to discover Holland is to visit it yourself, to enjoy the many surprising things that are there in abundance, and to find out for yourself that Holland has more. And so finally to the coast, unique because of its extensive dunes. Dunes which are still pounded by the element which perhaps more than anything else has shaped the history of Holland, the sea.